Okay.
Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce Ricardo de Leon Tallevas, who is a longtime friend of mine, who we met at the summer seminar in Colorado Springs of the American Numismatic Association. And Ricardo, I think, is probably the foremost expert on Mexican numismatics, certainly in the United States, but probably in the world.
Thank you very much. Well, we're going to start. And before I continue with this, I want to thank you for having me here tonight. Today, we're going to talk about a metal that you didn't even know that existed. And you're going to know more about this metal that you probably wanted to know. But it has a very interesting story, at least to me. So tonight, we're going to be talking about the most controversial metal of Mexico. And I can tell you this without hesitation. Also of the New World, and also of all Spanish history. Why? Why is it so controversial? Because this is the only metal made officially that depicts a lie, something that never happened. And it was not like the Condor tokens that probably some of you are acquainted with, that, you know, they probably put the taking of Cartagena when it never happened, but it was made in a local shop by somebody that was, you know, skilled to do these kind of engravings. And he started selling these to everybody. Again, I thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm extremely honored to be speaking to all of you. And before I start, I want to apologize for my English. I do my best, but I know that it's sometimes not enough, but hey, it's the best that we have right now. and that's it. Another thing that I wanted to say is that I reviewed a presentation that was done by somebody that was speaking about the lattice counterstamps a couple of months ago, and somebody asked him if these coins were in circulation in other countries, and he was not very sure how that happened. I can assure you that it happened through purchasing of old coins to a discount and then selling them to another countries at a face value and getting that percentage in profit. So yes, all coins in Spanish colonial America circulated from one place to another, even after they were demonetized in one country. All right, we continue with our presentation and not somebody else's. But I just wanted to make sure that this was recorded so somebody that had that question would know about it. Okay. Everything starts with the beginning. Where did the beginning started? It became this auction. It was done by a friend of mine, dear friend of mine. He's a very important coin dealer in Mexico. His name is Alberto Hidalgo. In 2014, I got his catalog as usual. And I never go for documents because I don't collect those things. I'm sorry for those who do. But lot 26 absolutely had me floored because it was talking about something that as a historian, I had never seen in any of the archives that I have visited. And it had to do with metals. Amounts of metals. That was unheard of. I've been a historian for at least 40 years of my life, going through papers in every place. They're not there. This guy was selling a very important document that listed how many metals they were made in colonial times. That document had to be mine. And it had to be mine because if it was mine, I can share with everybody whatever this document was about. Why is it, in my opinion, the most controversial metal ever struck? Because out of all the metals, you know, cataloged, if you look for Spanish colonial, you will see the same tendencies. Everyone was for the king, whatever the king was at the time. Every single council or government was, you know, stating in silver, copper, or gold, you know, their devotion to the king or to some event that had to do in Spain. And then, of course, we had to side with the king and whatever the king was for. Or it had to do with whenever the king in independent times, you know, was freed from the Napoleonic incarceration that he suffered. Why is this metal so special? Because this metal doesn't have to do with any of these, nothing whatsoever. It was not a commemoration. It was not of any kind that had to do with Spain. This is one out of the two medals in the whole colonial times in Mexico that had to do with something local of Mexico as then vicereign of New Spain. This is the medal that commemorated the independence of Mexico. Yes, believe it or not, that is the depiction of a snake on the beak of that poor eagle. Anyhow, but none of the medals had to do with anything of the War of Independence in Mexico. Catalogs, of course, listed things as they understood it, but they understood as they understood them, but not necessarily is the right thing to do. They put this medal as a medal of independence because it doesn't bear any date. Well, it has the two worlds separated, the ones that come in the pillar dollars. Well, now they're separated in this medal because it had to do with the independence. That's what the medal said right there in the center: independence, religion, and union. However, there's a problem. This medal was made in March of 1822 after our independence of 1821. So this is not one of those medals that had to do with Mexican independence. None of the 397 medals cataloged by Grove, which is the guy that cataloged these medals, and of course he was an American, had four particularities. None of them were made during the War of Independence, even if they somewhat talked about it. This is the most controversial medal because, as I told you, it depicted a lie. It was prosecuted by many for over 100 years. And it is one of barely two medals that commemorate something regarding to Mexico, or when then New Spain, because everything else had to do with Spain, not with Mexico. Okay, that was enough preamble. Let's go to the Battle of Mount of the Crosses, La Batalla de Monte de las Cruces. Let's see what happened. Let's see what happened in that battle and why was it so important. And for that, we need to go back 5 years before. The medal is dated in 1810. We need to go back to no other place but England. You would say, wait a minute, what does that have to do, a medal in New Spain, with England? Because the independence of all the New World that belonged to the Spanish crown began the independence in 1805 with the defeat of the French and the Spaniards in 1805. What does that have to do with anything? Let's keep on going. Napoleon lost that war, and you know Napoleon, and if you have read anything about him, is that he couldn't take anything lightly, especially a defeat. So if he couldn't defeat England, militarily, what he did was to start defeating it economically. So he made a blockade from all Europe to England. But of course, there's always somebody that wants to profit and do the black market at outrageous prices. And Portugal started dealing with England after the blockade imposed by Napoleon. And of course, the English were happy and more than obliged to pay. Napoleon didn't like that, so he went to get the Portuguese king and his family and put Portugal under that blockade. In those days, they didn't have airplanes, so he had to do it, either by land or by sea, and it was easier to do for him by land. So when he was in Spain, the royal family of the Braganza left in about 70 ships, and he went straight to Brazil to live there and leave Portugal to their own devices. And whenever they got there, they started, counter-stamping Mexican coins also in Brazil. Those are the coins that you sometimes see of Spanish colonial or the Spanish boss dollars. And when that was going on, in Spain, it was the most dumbest king ever in the history of Spain. He didn't want to rule. He left his wife, which was an Italian, rule the whole country. And of course, the lover of the queen was the one that really was in charge. Even though he was not much, they tried to save him from Napoleon, and they wanted to plan a route to escape. He was going to be sent from Madrid to Seville, and then from Seville to Mexico. And then he was going to be saved from Napoleon and his troops. Well, we know history, and that never happened. Why didn't it happen? We will see that in a minute. This is a coin of depicting of Charles IV, made in Mexico in 1805. It was a mutiny. It's called the Aranjuez Mutiny, which was a small revolution, a coup d'etat, on which they took prisoner the king and they made him abdicate on behalf of his teenage son, who became, Ferdinand VII. And then it was a problem because the father didn't want to leave the crown, and the king said that he was the rightful king. When all of that was going on, Madrid fell on Napoleonic forces on March the 20th of 1808. Napoleon realized that they were in the verge of a civil war, and he couldn't, bear the thought of a civil war in Spain because he didn't have the resources to be dealing with England in a civil war in Spain, and Portugal selling in the black market to England. It was too many things going out of hand. So he called both of the kings without knowing that the other one was going to be there, and he incarcerated both of them in the castle of Valenciennes, and both of them had to abdicate on behalf of his elder brother, Joseph Napoleon. Joseph Napoleon was called Joe the Bottle, not because he was an alcoholic, but because he started getting a lot of taxes on wine because he needed money. Everybody needed money. But the most outrageous thing that he dared to do happened to be in coins. Well, he put his face, and as it was, expected, and he put Joseph Napoleon by the grace of God. But the reverse is the most interesting one. I'm not sure how you call this in English, but the central part of a coat of arms in heraldic terms would be escusón in Spanish, which is the most important part of a shield. This coat of arms bore the three fleur-de-lis that had to do with the Bourbon family, which was the one that had been in power since 1700 in Spain. They took those three fleur-de-lis out and they put the eagle of Napoleon. That is not the most outrageous thing. For the first time since 1589, something happened. The New World, the pillar dollars, the sign, appeared for the first time in the coat of arms of Spain. And in the legend, it said Indiarum, which means Indies, which meant Mexico. Overnight, we became French. Since 1589, a coin in Spain didn't bear Indies because they say that all Indies was another reign of Spain and it was treated equally. Of course, we were not, but that's a completely different story. All right, so what's going on in Mexico? Well, the news came in Mexico about that, and they realized that, there was no king. For the first time, we didn't know what to do. So they went straight to the books, and they said, well, what do we do? Well, the book says that we have to do the same thing as the French did, the États Généraux, which means general states. They started to ask for a council made out of representatives from every place. And for the first time, we had a voice in that council. And, they said, everybody has to stay put. We're not going to become French. We're going to be the representatives of the king, and everybody has to stay in the same places. We're going to start coining medals saying that Ferdinand VII is going to be the king and no other but Ferdinand VII. It was a huge turmoil, as you may assume. And this is when the cry of independence happened. In Dolores, the town of Dolores, these are municipal coins. They had, the conspiracies in Querétaro, which is our Philadelphia, and then they started the cry of independence. I want for you to see something because you're going to get a kick out of that. Anybody wants to guess the age of Hidalgo? How old do you think he was when he did this cry of independence? Come on, unmute yourselves. I'm going to tell you this. I am a teacher. Michael forgot to say that. If you don't ask me questions, I'm going to start asking you questions.
80 years old.
80 years old. Who else?
75.
All right, we're getting younger. Between 75 and 80. Well, get a kick of this. He was so old that he's depicted always as an ancient man, and he was barely 57 years of age. In 2 more years, I'm going to be as old as Hidalgo.
That's my age.
And there you go, 57. All right, so these are municipal coins or tokens as they're perceived. As you see, we had them in all over Mexico. I'm not sure why they make such a big deal with the Texans holas, that they're now worth $20,000 or $50,000, when in reality these coins are worth at the most $120 or $150. But that's another story. But what was so interesting about this cry of independence? Hidalgo, who did not want to get an independence. Modern historians have called this movement as the cry of independence without a plan, or a cry of a plan without independence, because he never established a plan. He just wanted to go to Mexico City because somebody imposed a government there because they deposed the old viceroy. And he said, that's wrong. You should have asked us who wanted to have us as a viceroy. But the problem is that this movement was obsolete because from Spain, even though the king was incarcerated, some juntas the parallel government of the insurrection or the rebellion or the resistance, that's the word, the resistance of the Spanish, had already sent a viceroy on behalf of the king who was incarcerated. So his movement was obsolete. But Hidalgo didn't want to give up something that he tasted for the first time in his life, a council, a representation. The cry of independence of the United States of America was not death to King George III or we hate all England. It was not taxation without representation. It was the same thing here without the taxation. We just wanted to have a representation of some sort. He already had arrived in Veracruz on August the 26th, 2 weeks before. He already knew that it was a new viceroy. He couldn't care less. He went straight for Mexico City. And of course, the viceroy of New Spain was new, and he had to face many challenges. So the viceroy of New Spain had the most important things. It was two biggest fears, and I'm going to talk about them in a minute. First thing that he realized it was a rebellion in Mexico, and this is one of the documents that I found in my hometown of Monterrey, and this is the perfect 19th century rhetoric in verbiage in an official document. It said there that it was referring to the most noble priest of Dolores, Dr. Senor Miguel Hidalgo, and the dragoons captains of the Queen's military forces. All those pompous names. The next paragraph said, those abominable monsters and individuals need to be taken here, either dead or alive. We're going to give you 10,000 pesos, which is 595 pounds of silver. Imagine what we could do with almost 600 pounds of Spanish colonial silver in brilliant uncirculated coins. My goodness. NGC and PCGS would be crazy with all the coins that we would send for certifications. He had two problems, I told you. The first one, that he didn't know anybody. He didn't know who to trust and who didn't trust. And the second was the most real of all his fears. He didn't want for this movement of rebellion to spread, because New Spain was not like New England that was 13 colonies. You know, New Spain was huge. And in other parts of Spanish colonial territories, they already had been making this kind of paper money, like in Venezuela in 1811, they were making paper money on behalf of an independent government. He didn't want to face that because that was a very sticky situation. So he did exactly what he had to do. Instead of concentrating all the forces in Mexico City, knowing that Hidalgo was going to take Mexico City, he divided his troops in 3 places. He sent them from Mexico City to Querétaro. He sent the Count Flon, and then he sent Calleja to San Luis Potosí. Calleja will become somebody of importance later on in history because he himself was going to be named the next viceroy of New Spain. But that's another story. And the third one was Abarca. He went to Guadalajara. I'm sure that out of the 3 names, probably you have heard of Guadalajara. So from Veracruz, the viceroy commanded 3 little towns in some soldiers, which was probably the local police, on the charge of Villamil to go to Mexico City to reinforce that, just in case. They didn't think that Hidalgo was going to be daring enough to go. Well, guess what? He did. This is Hidalgo's route. He started in Guanajuato, and then he went to another town. Then he took one of the most important towns in the time called Morelia, which would be our Boston without the harbor. And then from there, he went straight for Mexico City. This is when our battle begins. And this is the map of what this war was. Let me explain to you what happened that day. This is the map of the mount. You can see the mountain, whoops, right there. This is the road that went from a town called that is called Toluca to Mexico City. In here you can see Mexico with a J because it was done by the Spaniards. All right. So now we get ourselves more or less, located. Mexico City sent some armies to take that mountain on October the 29th of 1810. And they wanted to have the mountain before, the insurgency would come to that road because it's the highest point. So from there they could, arrange a defense. And of course, the three captains that were there were Trujillo, Mendeville, and Bringas. Those are the last names of these captains or these commanders. You see, there were more commanders probably than soldiers. But in that battle, it was one soldier that earned a higher rank for his audacity. His name was Iturbide. If you collect Mexican coins, you will know that he became the first emperor of Mexico. Yes, we're there to have an empire. And this guy was going to be in coins later on for 1822 and 1823. But again, that's another story. This is 1810, it's 12 years before. So they were getting ready, like cats about to jump. And then the insurgency came. It was no match for the defendant of that hill, because it was 100,000 people that were going to take that hill. And they did. The night of the 29th, the insurgency was on top of that hill. And the remnants of the defenders of that road to Mexico City, settled by the road. They didn't want for the insurgency to go to Mexico City. It was another gruesome battle. And they said, the chronicles of the time said, it was so easy to know when a cannon was fired from the royalists, because you could see lines of people just disappearing. It was a mob just trying to take the soldiers. It was a butchery in that place. So at some point, the Spaniards put a flag because they wanted to have a dialogue of peace. One of the insurgency troops went there to start dialoguing. But what this guy did was the worst thing ever under any military situation. He got a cannon and he fired it against the peace garrison that came to talk to them. This really enraged the insurgency and annihilated whatever was left of the royalists. The royalists were defeated and they went back to Mexico City. Bringas died in that battle. The remnant forces went to Mexico City to tell the viceroy, sir, there's nothing, absolutely nothing that are going to stop these insurgents to come and take Mexico City. Absolutely nothing. Get ready. We're going to be destroyed, ransacked, and killed. And what I just told you is if this map could be animated, so you would understand more or less what happened in that battle. So this is where the whole thing starts. The Battle of Monte de las Cruces, or Mounts of the Crosses, was won by the insurgency. We know that Trujillo was the one that fired this cannon against the peace talkers. And even the Spaniards got flabbergasted with that. This is what they wrote about that. His own friends, his own, co-commanders. It was so humiliating to be a soldier for the royalists that day because of that guy. And this is a real painting of what was going on at the time. Look at the disarray that Mexico City is in. You're not Catholic, I'm assuming, but just imagine. I mean, it's really laughable at some point with all the respect for those that are dead, but it was virgins going in processions in one place and another virgin going in another street with another procession on the other, praying to the Lord that, and to every saint, that the insurgency were not going to take Mexico City. And the unthinkable happened. Hidalgo kept on waiting. He didn't go and take Mexico City for 2 days. He waited in those roads. And then he said, let's retreat. And then they said, what? What do you mean? Mexico City is around the corner. Hidalgo was fearful that they were going to ransack the city as they did with Guanajuato when they took it. Guanajuato is a very important mining town, and we have a mint. We had a mint for almost 100 years in there. But the most important thing is that Hidalgo knew that he couldn't take Mexico City and keep it, because, you know, all the forces that, you know, the viceroy had placed everywhere, they were going to come back, and it was going to be a massacre of them. So they retreated. Allende, who was the Washington of Hidalgo, said, all those lives that were lost in that battle for nothing. If you would have made up your mind, old man, we wouldn't have been in this situation. Now we're retreating without having anything to do with Mexico City and with all of those lives lost. By the way, if you have any questions, please just unmute yourself and interrupt me. This is a talk among friends. Just interrupt me and ask me any question if you want to ask any questions. So
Ricardo.
Yes.
So Hidalgo was a priest, right?
Señor. Yes. Yes.
So he was, okay. I wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Yes, he was a priest, and you know, the independence had to come from there because they were the only ones that could bring new ideas. The military was always loyal to the king. Even Allende said, once you dare to declare independence, you don't count with me anymore. So that's why Hidalgo hesitated to declare independence right away.
Thank you.
It's kind of a sticky situation. Okay, so what happened was as follows. The guy in Querétaro Flon stayed there. Calleja came all the way from San Luis Potosí and went to Mexico City. Abarca left Guadalajara as soon as he knew that Hidalgo was going to Guadalajara. Hidalgo's forces split in two. Half of them went to Guanajuato, the other half went to Guadalajara. And we're going to leave them there because we don't care about them anymore. The most important thing is what happened in Battle of Monte de las Cruces. This is the document that I acquired and the document that we're going to be talking about from now on. The medal said the glorious action of Monte de las Cruces, Mounts of the Crosses, but it said Veracruz. It's two different states. It's like if I say the glorious Battle of San Francisco, and on the bottom of that medal, I put Nevada. You would say, but wait a minute, San Francisco is in California. Why didn't they put California on the bottom? Why did they put Nevada? It's two different states, two different places. And the document, this is the first page of that document, and it talks precisely about this medal. As it was said, it's 22 pages. It is a tabloid-sized document. It's incomplete, and it was stolen from the archives in Veracruz. When was it stolen? Maybe somebody stole it, you know, two years before I got it. I need to return it back to that archives. No, it didn't. It was stolen a little before that. And I have a very good hunch when and by whom and why. It was done in Veracruz, in the building that I just showed you. It has a lot of annotations. It starts in page 392. It's supposed to have, it was probably the book that went from 1810 to 1813. And it says council, which means the local council. So what does it say in there? Oh, a very important story. But before we go to that story, let's hear what one of the historians of the time said about this medal. If you didn't know the existence of this document and you open a book, it will tell you that in 1813, the glorious victory already had coined a medal that went all the way to London because this guy, another priest, saw it and he was flabbergasted on whatever happened in there. He was a very well-known historian. This is the reverse of the medal. And those are the names of the people that he just named. This is what he saw. This is the medal that he's describing. In Mexico City, for 6 full days, Mendeville didn't give an official military account of what had happened in Monte de las Cruces or Mount of the Crosses, because if he did, the viceroy had to publish it. And if the viceroy should have published it, pandemonium would set, even worse in Mexico City. So he kept quiet. The viceroy of New Spain kept quiet of the defeat. He didn't want to have a mob, a pandemonium going into Mexico City. So he got quiet. The rumor in Mexico City is that, you know, the Spaniards won at the Battle of Mount of Crosses, because if they wouldn't have won, you know, the insurgency would have gone into Mexico City. So that's logic. We have to have won. And the viceroy heard those rumors. He still kept quiet. Look, Lucas Alamán is saying in 1838 that this medal was made by the viceroy of New Spain. This Lucas Alamán, which is our Prescott, didn't know who made this medal, and it is 28 years later after this medal was made. So Lucas Alamán is pointing directly at the viceroy of New Spain. He paid for that. He made it because he wanted to make sure that this lie was going to stay there forever. So here we go. Who made this medal? Well, we now have the first look at it. In 1838, this guy said that he was the viceroy. But first, in 1813, the other friar said that it was the Europeans in Veracruz. So wait a minute, now we're having too many people making this medal. So it was the Europeans. No. Alamán said that it was Venegas, you know, the viceroy. And then everybody kept on quoting each other. And they say, no. From 1869 to 1877, the history was, it was the commerce in Veracruz. In 1857, if you open the book, a book that, you know, the governor of Miguel Lerdo de Tejada did, it said it was the consulate. The consulate is not what you think of it today. The consulate was a toll road office. So they said it was a toll road office between Mexico City and Veracruz. That's why the name of Veracruz came to be that medal. So if you didn't know about the existence of this document, you would have thought that it was either the viceroy of New Spain or the Europeans in Veracruz or the commerce in Veracruz or the consulate in Veracruz. Now we have 4 culprits. Well, how many people could pitch in to make this medal? This is why it is very important to go to the sources. We have 2 culprits. Who did this? We will see in a minute. From all these people, the one that interests me the most is Miguel Lerdo de Tejada, because he was the governor of Veracruz. The only thing that he had to do was to say, go downstairs to the archives and find out who made this medal. This document, the one that I own now, should have been in that archive, but probably it was not there anymore because the French invaded Veracruz in 1838. Probably that document was stolen between 1838 and 1857. The Americans took over that town in 1847. Maybe one of the lucky soldiers took it and sold the book and then, you know, as old paper or something. Probably bought it in the market for 2 pesos. I don't know. But one thing is for sure, the governor of the state of Veracruz, when he was writing about the history of Veracruz, could not pinpoint who made this medal because the document was not there in 1857. And this is the guy, Miguel Lerdo de Tejada, and he appears in one of the paper monies of those broken banks in Mexico in the 1910s. All right, we have a problem. Who made this medal? We're going to see it in a minute. We know now that it was made in Veracruz. 6 days it took the news from, a letter to go from Mexico City to Veracruz, 6 days. Remember that for 6 days, it was no official, statement from the military about the loss of Monte de las Cruces. But the big rumor was that, the Spaniards had won that war, which in fact they lost. So the news came in November the 9th of 1810 to Veracruz. The rumors say that the Spaniards won Monte de las Cruces, the Mount of the Crosses. So on the 10th, the document starts saying, this is the first page that I have of that document mentioning this medal. And it said, and to perpetuate the brilliant effort of the Viceroy, Your Excellency, we're going to make a medal. So now we know who started this medal. It was not the Viceroy of New Spain. It was not the merchants. It was not Jesus. It was not the Viceroy of New Spain, the government, the Europeans in Veracruz, and it was not the consulate, the toll road office. It was the government, the city council of Veracruz. That's why they put their names, because they purchased the medal and they started a fundraise. And it says that they started a fundraise with 500 pesos from public funds. Now we know who made it. Everybody in every single book written in the 19th century was wrong because the documents say something else. And they give a purpose to this medal. It was going to be given to those who served in that battle and the officials and the officers that were there, and on and on and on. And of course, to the Majesty, if it's possible. And I'm showing you the official document in Spanish. In November 15 of 1810, it was a circus that happened to be in Veracruz at the time. They heard that they were going to make a medal, and they needed to have some. It was a fundraising operation, ongoing, and they decided to take part of that. So they told the people that they were going to give whatever they could, raise in one of the performances. And in one of the performances, they gave every single cent, or real, that they had. And in the document, it was written, for that heretic priest of Dolores, Miguel Hidalgo. That's the document that I'm quoting. 476 pesos were given to the fundraiser, almost 30 pounds in silver. And then who made the medal? How did this happen? Well, they sent an agent. Actually, the agent was already there in Mexico City. They asked him to do the diligence of, in those days, that's what it's called, a diligence. But it was in reality the whole red tape, to run the whole red tape to make a medal. And his name was Francisco Maniao y Torquemada. I don't know if it was related to that Torquemada or not. But this guy was the lawyer from Veracruz that was established in Mexico City that started all the red tape to make this medal. In November 15, he got the word that he was going to do it. And the very next day, he went to visit the Viceroy of New Spain. He met with the Viceroy of New Spain. And then he said exactly what he was going to do with this medal and the fundraiser. Whatever money was going to be left, it was going to be distributed as well. The Viceroy was elated about the divine providence. He was not going to spend a red cent from his pockets, and somebody else was going to coin a medal that was going to be distributed in every place, and everybody was going to know the lie that he won in Mount of the Crosses. The very next day, in November the 17th of 1810, they met again, and the Viceroy said, this is the document that I'm quoting, they said that he was going to go straight to the mint to have the most regal medal ever made to commemorate anything. in the history of Mexico. So they started naming names. And what was the process of making a medal? Nobody knew before this document how to make a medal because nobody had gone to the archives. After this document was found, now we have other information regarding to other medals. And you see the drawing that they made of this medal is exactly what, as I told you. And that is the signature of the Viceroy of New Spain, that they already had arranged the sketches of the medal, and that both of them approved of that. Venegas was absolutely elated. The medal looks exactly as this sketch, except for the date. The date was placed on the other side. And then here we go. Everybody that made a donation in that fundraiser was named and their amount given recorded. 483 donations. Well, let's see. This is what the document says in the first page of that donation. It is the list to make a medal to commemorate the glory of the country in the Mount of the Cruces or the Cruces Field. By December the 1st, the whole fundraiser, well, actually November the 30th, was closed. On December the 1st, they counted the money, and this is what they got. Let's go on for statistics, because I know that, you know, people in this country love statistics. 20 days, they collected daily 650 pesos and 2 reales. The 2 reales is 25 cents, is 2 bits. So it's 654 pesos and 25 cents every day for 20 days. That's a lot of money. It's almost 40 pounds every day of coins. And that document helped me to see what were the most common family names. As you may expect it, there's no surprises. Martinez, Rodriguez, Gutierrez, Lopez, Gonzalez, Garcia, Fernandez, Gomez. None of them is unknown to you. What about the first names? Before I start going, what do you think is the most common first name? Anybody, unmute yourselves.
Jose.
Jose. Anybody
Ricardo.
else? Ricardo. I like you already. I like you. Let's see. Ta-da! The most common name was Jose. You got that right. And the second one was Juan. I like these documents because they can give you a shade of other kind of information. You know, I found online this image, and the same guy that is addressed this letter is the same guy that donated 20 pesos. What was the highest amount of money that was donated? Well, as the document said, it was the 500 pesos that the city council gave. And look, the governor just gave 100 pesos. But there's always that politician that wants to, you know, look good with his boss. And he gave another matching amount of 500 pesos. So the biggest amount that were donated was 500 pesos by one of the representative of the city council and by the city council of Veracruz from the public funds. And then from Governor Carlos Urrutia, who was the one that gave 100 pesos. After that, yes, shame on him. After that, you had 500 pesos and 500 pesos. What was the smallest one that it was given? We'll see that in a minute. 500 pesos is almost 15 pounds of gold. Imagine 15 pounds of gold coins of colonial times, brilliant uncirculated, MS 64s and 65s. My goodness. These are the donations. Mostly they were small donations. 25 pesos, 50 pesos, 100 pesos, 28 people. But the smallest one was merely 25 cents, 2 reales. And it said that this amount was given by a poor guy that didn't want to give his name. So it was an anonymous donation. Hey, Every little counts. Every little thing counts. Total in pesos, they got 13,084 pesos and 7 reales, almost 85 pesos. Look at the amount of pounds in silver or gold for those days. It was not easy and cheap to make a medal. I'm sure that not all of this was spent in a medal, and some of that was given to, you know, the widows and all of that, as they said, but still it was a pretty penny. This is the last page on which you could see how things were recorded. And look, it says total in pesos. We didn't have a decimal system, and still the word pesos appeared in documents since the middle of 1500s. So the word pesos existed to denominate the 8 reales coin, even before we created the peso for the Mexicans, because the first time that the peso came was in Chile. Another interesting thing that I saw is that the word pesos came after number 2. Whenever you have 2 pesos and up, it's stated pesos. This is the abbreviature of pesos. But whenever it was 1 peso, it was not stated as 1 peso, but 8 reales. You could see the 8 and the R and the S, 8 reales. So in official documents, anything over a peso was stated in pesos, and anything of 8 reales and down, it was stated in reales. That was an odd thing that I found. Again, this is the reverse of the medal. And remember, the reverse of the medal is exactly as it was designed, except for the date. What happened to the other side? I've been talking and talking and talking and talking like there's no tomorrow about one side, and it didn't have any design. Well, this is a part of the design. Ferdinand VII is portrayed as a sun because he's resplendescent to his subjects as a savior or truth. That is the interpretation of the symbology. What about the rest? Well, you see the Lion of Spain with the scepter that is crossing the only victory laurels of victory that you can see on the right-hand side of the oval of Ferdinand VII, which meant victory for Spain. On the other side, you see a cherub, which meant the innocence of the future. And that innocence of the future was not just being there all innocent. It had to do with the fascie, which had the axe pointing down as to give justice, to provide justice, which happened to be the outcome of the battle according to this medal that was depicting a lion. And then you see the mirror of justice. So the innocence of the future was looking at itself through the mirror of justice and the sagacity of the snake. That's how they earned the victory, because they were very smart, they were very good, they were very clever, militarily speaking. So this whole thing says that the victory of Spain, or Ferdinand VII being our savior, was going to provide justice, and future generations were going to talk about this gallant battle of the Mount of the Crosses. The battle. This is the Mount of the Crosses. You can see the crosses around there. Anybody has an idea why they had crosses in there? Why do you think they had crosses? Anybody? Unmute yourself. Why do you think they had crosses? Because there's not a church. No
Cemetery.
one? Huh?
Cemetery?
A cemetery. That's a very good thought. But yes and no. This place was packed with thieves. So whenever they hang one, they put a cross to remind others that people that would be a thief or a robber, they would face, you know, some justice. That's why it was called the Mount of the Crosses. And they put those crosses there because that's where the battle came. But who was the person that was leading the battle? Well, in 1881, one of the Spaniards' archives that happened to have one of these medals stated that it was the Viceroy of New Spain, which would be okay with the document because the document said that it was going to commemorate the Viceroy's victory. However, in another paper, it's being alleged that it could be Trujillo who was the main commander of the whole thing. And it could make sense with the document because it says there that they were going to commemorate the commander-in-chief, which was Trujillo. One way or another, that guy has been, a mystery for 200 years. And then it's been said in the description that it was 3 people that came from the provincial regiment of Veracruz. And that's the way that they used to dress themselves. And then the date, October the 30th of 1810. Very faint, you can see here, made by Francisco Gordillo in Mexico, MO. This is one of the very few medals that state the Mexican mint mark. Here we go. That is the medal on the other side. It is a beautiful medal. It is one out of 2 medals in the history of Mexico that depicted something that is in regards of Mexico, and it is one out of 2 medals in the whole history of Mexico that depicts a battle. So this medal is very interesting for that purpose. When were these medals given? Well, remember that they said that they were going to be distributed? Well, actually they did. Trujillo got a gold medal for his valor. Imagine that, right? In February the 3rd of 1811, they were given in Mexico City in the Cathedral Church. Everybody was summoned and everybody was dressed in, the best military uniform. And I found this document on which it said that they had to wear a patch on their chest. This is the only surviving patch of that day. And it was embroidered by the nuns of a couple of the convents to make sure that they were made with a blessing for those who spared the city to being ransacked by those the members of the insurgency. And this information came from that source. 6,000, this is something ludicrous. 6,000 escudos were made in copper in one of the offices of the fakers, of the people that counterfeited money. They actually went to a counterfeit guy that counterfeited money to make counterfeit pieces to be given because they didn't have enough medals to give to everybody, and they wanted for everybody to receive something. So they counterfeited their own coins officially, they silvered them, and then they give them to the soldiers. All right. The brother of Francisco Maniao y Torquemada, his name was Joaquin. Joaquin went to Spain to the courts in Cadiz. And in 1811, that was the last time that a medal was given to anybody. He went to Spain to give these medals as in honor of the Mount of the Cruces victory. And he gave it to the king. Those medals, believe it or not, they're still there in Madrid. In November of 1812, that was the last time that a medal of the Mount of the Crosses was named anywhere in history. This is the diary of the courts, and this is where, it was stated, and the way that it was stated. This is the place on which these medals were given. It was, the council, or the courts were holding their meetings in the church of in San Leon in Cadiz. How many were made? This was the most important thing about this document. Whenever I got the document, my friend Alberto Hidalgo told me, "Are you sure that you want to give this information? Because that is what makes this document valuable." And I said, "Of course. If anybody else gets this document, nobody's going to know the history of these medals. I must have it so I can publish it, and everybody will know the history of this medal." And that's exactly what I'm doing with you. And this is the original document, and it says, the first batch was given and distributed immediately of silver and copper. They hadn't made any in gold yet. So if you add all of that together, it's 234 medals in copper and silver. But that's not all. Of course, they made more. This is the last important fact of the Mount of the Crosses medal document. 110 in gold, 1,500 in silver, and 1,000 in copper. And I'm going to tell you exactly as I tell everybody in Mexico whenever I give a talk about this subject. Do not believe on these as being it. It doesn't matter how many they made, but how many of them survived. Today, out of the 110 medals in gold, one is known, the one that was given to Madrid. Out of the 1,500 in silver coin, these are the most difficult to get of the common ones. I would believe that for every 5 or 10 medals in copper, you would find one in silver, which means that the ratio has changed. Most of them were prosecuted by the historians because they depicted a lie. Every single one of the historians that I have mentioned to you throughout this conversation, they said that this was a lie. Most of them were melted, especially the silver ones. They're huge. They're about 50 millimeters in diameter. It's about 2.5 ounces of silver. I mean, it was good silver. By now, you have been a witness and you have gone and marched with the soldiers in Mount of the Crosses. You were one of them. You witnessed exactly what happened in 1810. You probably knew today more about the Battle of Mount of the Crosses, a battle which you have never heard before, and about a medal that you probably had never even knew that existed before. And of course, you have heard and read most of the documents that I have shared with everybody. All of you, undoubtedly, because of your patience, deserve a medal. Okay, what about 3? And with that, I say goodbye to you and I thank you very much for your kind patience. And before I go, I want to tell you that I don't like to come with a place empty-handed. As we speak, right now I'm sending Michael, this whole thing that I just showed you was printed, of course, in the edited version and in good English in the numismatist. So I'm going to give Michael right now an electronic copy of this. So Michael, if you please do me a favor, and whomever wants to have a copy of this in good English, so you can understand what I tried to say in my English tonight, you can go and ask him for this document. Where is it? Give me a second because I don't want to leave you before Jesucristo. Oh, here it is.
Ricardo, will you
Yes.
take some questions too?
Yeah.
Yes. Questions, comments, anything.
Well, I have one to start with. You said it was 2.5 ounces of silver. How much gold is in the gold one?
Oh, imagine if it would be at least 5.25 or so in gold.
So that does suggest that melting them would have been profitable activity.
Yes, especially because it was a non-popular subject when the Republic arose. Because when the Republic came, anything that had to do with Hidalgo was it. Anything against Hidalgo was wrong. So it was, as you may say, something that had to be dealt with immediately.
Ricardo,
So,
is the gold medal known to exist?
yes, one example in Madrid. One example in Madrid. Is
In the
only one
museum, or where is it?
It's called the Monetary Cabinet of His Majesty the King. And it is in the Royal Library. Why is it there? Beats me. But it's in the Royal Library in Madrid. I've been in that place a million times. Never occurred to me to know that they had a numismatic archives. But I'm going to tell you something that is going to make you cry until tomorrow. When Franco came into power, he needed money. Guess what the little angel of the Lord did? He realized that it was a lot of gold coins and silver coins in that museum. So he melted them down. Roman coins made in Spain were gone by silver. However, whenever you have somebody's true evil, you have a true hero on the side. The director of the museum knew about this order to be carried. He made a hole on the wall and he started packing as many coins as he could inside of that wall. And that's how some of them or most of them survived. Some of them that were melted. So I'm enclosing this to Michael. Give me 1 second. If you have any more questions or comments, please, by all means. It doesn't have to be about these. It can be about Mexican coins. It can
Sir,
be
I have a
about,
question.
sí, señor.
What are the Grove numbers for the metals? You mentioned it's in Grove's catalogs. I just bought them.
You bought the Grove.
The series of Grove's books, yeah,
You get the 3 of them.
and the fourth with the
With
Mexican
Wow.
tokens too.
You must have spent a pretty penny, because those things are not easy to come. In the I believe that in this article that I'm enclosing to Michael,
Yes.
it has all that little, but I can tell you right away, because I have it here. I can tell you right away, and it is events of 1810. It's one of the very first coins metals that you will see. Oh no, it's in the green one. It's not in the white one. It's in the green one.
The one he's holding right now.
There you go. Voila. Yes. If you go by the king, it's Ferdinand VII. And there you go. It would be Jesus. It's huge. It is very easily spot.
If it's in the article, don't worry about it. I'll see the article.
Yes, it is 1808, 1808, 1808, 1809, 1808. Oh God. Yeah, it is in the article, but it's in the green book. The problem with these books is that it will never give you any amount, because he didn't know, and he will never tell you how scarce or rare they are. They just list whatever it is. That's it.
Do you find this metal available on the market today?
Good question. Yes, it's not going to be cheap. The ugliest one that I have, I purchased it for about $350, and the best one that you saw, the copper one, it was about $1,000, and the silver one would be for about $1,500. For a foreign metal, for you it's foreign, for me it's Mexican. It is a pretty penny, in my opinion, because for that amount this is what we do as collectors. You see, I like the history, but I'm not going to spend $1,500 on that coin, on that metal. I'd rather buy, a Carson City, Morgan dollar, whatever, because everybody goes for whatever they like, and that's fine. At least you have a piece of information that you didn't have before.
Yes. Okay, any other questions for Ricardo?
I've got one more question. Sorry. Is your contact information in the article, your email?
My dear friend, you really got me there. But no.
Maybe Michael has it.
In the chat, I'm going to give you my email address. Michael has it. That's how
If Michael has it, he can give it to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever get any emails from me?
No, sir. Not a single one. The only communications that we got, but you know what? It had to do with the server, because I got somebody from Colombia that is sending me stuff, and I haven't received anything as well.
Okay.
I put my information in the chat room, and I'm going to give you my phone number, and I'm going to tell you why I'm giving you my phone number. Because, and I don't want for you to be shy about this, if you find a Mexican coin or a Mexican metal, and you don't have the catalog or the expertise to see if it's good or not, snap a picture and send it to me and say, Ricardo, they're selling me this for, yesterday, a guy that I don't know posted, sent me a paper money, and they wanted $180 for that, $180 for that. I told him the note is good, but not for that price in a million years. He said, that's what I thought. He said, what would be a fair price? And I said, offer him 130 so you can pay 150. And that's exactly what he did.
Very good.
Anything that I can do for you, my dear friends, remember, we're a family. If we collect coins, we're tailored with the same pair of scissors, as we say in Spanish.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Ricardo. This has been a fantastic presentation, very enjoyable. I think we all give you a round of applause.
Very good. Very good.
And you're certainly invited to continue in the rest of the meeting when we do the show and tell.
Thank you. I will
and other
stay.
things.
Thank you.